He was just a kid with a bucket and a dream, until two unexpected legends changed everything. What happened next? You won't believe it. Watch till the end. Like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more powerful stories. The sun scorched the streets of Los Angeles with relentless heat. Pavement shimmered, car hoods burned to the touch, and even the air itself felt heavy. The door to a high-end gym swung open with a thud as John Cena stepped outside, a towel draped around his neck and sweat rolling down his temple. Behind him followed Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, stretching his thick arms with a satisfied grunt. "Solid workout," Dwayne said, cracking his neck. "Haven't pushed that hard in a while." Cena chuckled, glancing over with a grin. "Thought you were going to pass out halfway through squats." Dwayne smirked. "Pass out? You're the one who nearly dropped the bar on your chest. Getting old, Cena. Old enough to still outbench you." They laughed and started making their way across the parking lot, the heat radiating from the ground like a stove. Cena pointed ahead. "Car's that way. Come on, I'm driving today." "Lucky me," Dwayne muttered. As they passed between rows of parked cars, Cena slowed. Something had caught his eye. A small figure moving from car to car, clutching a plastic bucket and a torn rag. The boy couldn't have been older than 12. His clothes hung loose on his skinny frame. One sneaker had duct tape wrapped around the toe. He was going from vehicle to vehicle, tapping gently on the glass and asking something neither Cena nor Dwayne could make out. Curious, they both stopped to watch. "You see this?" Cena asked quietly. Dwayne nodded. "Yeah, looks like he's washing windows." The boy approached a shiny black sedan. He tapped softly on the driver's window. "Sir, $1 to clean your windows?" The driver, a man in a pressed suit, didn't even look at him. He waved a hand dismissively and turned up the volume on his radio. The boy didn't argue. He nodded politely, adjusted the grip on his bucket, and moved on to the next car. It happened again, then again. Rejected, ignored. One man even yelled, "Get lost," and rolled up his window. Cena and Dwayne exchanged a glance. The kid had grit. He wasn't begging, just working. Without a word, the boy approached their vehicle. He froze briefly when he saw them, two towering men, muscles and fame combined. Recognition flashed across his face, but he didn't retreat. He stepped forward. "Sirs, I can clean your windows, just $1. It'll only take a minute." Cena folded his arms, studying him. $1, huh?" The boy nodded, voice steady though his eyes betrayed exhaustion. "Yes, sir." "All right," Cena said finally, "but only if you do a perfect job." The boy lit up. "Yes, sir." He set the bucket down, dipped the rag, and got to work. His movements were swift and practiced. He wiped each pane with care, his motions precise despite the rag's frayed edges. He didn't waste a second, moving from side to side with almost military focus. Dwayne watched, impressed. "Kid knows what he's doing." The boy looked up briefly and smiled. "Gotta be fast. People don't like waiting." Cena leaned against the truck. "You do this a lot?" "Every day," the boy said, wiping the side mirror clean. "When I can. My mom works 2 jobs. I try to help buy groceries, diapers for my baby sister." Cena's jaw tightened slightly. Dwayne looked away, his face hardening. The job took less than 5 minutes. When he was done, the windows were spotless. He stepped back, rubbing his hands on his shorts. "Done, sir." Cena walked around the truck slowly, pretending to inspect the windows with exaggerated scrutiny. The boy stood there nervously. Finally, Cena nodded and pulled out his wallet. He handed over $1. The boy took it gratefully. "Thank you, sir." But Dwayne was still looking at him. "What's your name?" "Kevin." Kevin, it's summer. Shouldn't you be out with your friends, playing ball or something? Kevin hesitated, then looked down. I wish, but my family needs help. My mom gets home late. I take care of my little brothers. Sometimes I miss school too, but I try not to. His voice was quiet, honest. A flash of something crossed Cena's face. He reached into his pocket again, this time pulling out a thick stack of cash. Dwayne did the same. In silence, they counted out the money together and handed it over. Kevin's eyes widened in disbelief. "Sir, I can't. That's too much." Dwayne shook his head. "You earned it. You work hard. You take care of your family. That's what real men do." Kevin's hands trembled as he took the money. He clutched it to his chest like it was the most important thing he'd ever touched. "Thank you," he whispered. "I don't know what to say." "No need," Cena said. "Just promise you'll use it wisely." "I will, I promise." "And don't forget to be a kid sometimes," Dwayne added. Kevin beamed. He turned and started walking down the lot, holding the money tight. Cena smiled as he watched him go. "He's got something special." Dwayne nodded. "He's going to be someone." Then Cena stopped. His expression darkened. "Hold up." Dwayne followed his gaze. Down the parking lot, a group of men had stepped between the cars. Bikers, loud jackets, tattoos, leather. One of them, tall with a deep scar down his cheek, stepped into Kevin's path and snatched the cash. "What's this?" he sneered. "Where'd you get this kind of money? Rob a bank?" Kevin's voice was defiant. "I earned it. Give it back." The other bikers laughed. Scarface raised his hand like he was about to strike, but he never got the chance. Cena's grip wrapped around his wrist mid-swing. Scarface winced in pain. Dwayne appeared beside him like a shadow. "Wrong move," Cena said. "That's not how you treat people." Scarface ripped his hand free. "Who do you think you are?" He looked up and finally realized. "Wait, no way, you're—" "Yeah," Cena said flatly, "and we don't like bullies." Scarface's cocky smirk vanished. "Relax, just playing." He dangled the cash, pretending to offer it, then yanked it back and shoved Kevin. Kevin stumbled. The bikers howled. Cena's fist clenched. Dwayne moved first. One biker swung a chain. Dwayne ducked, disarmed him, and knocked him cold. Another ran at Cena, who caught him mid-jump and slammed him to the pavement. In seconds, the bikers were groaning, scattered, defeated. Scarface tried to crawl away. Cena grabbed his collar and hauled him up. "You done?" Scarface nodded frantically. Cena dropped him like garbage. Dwayne picked up the cash and handed it back to Kevin. "It's yours." Kevin looked at them, speechless. "You okay?" Cena asked. Kevin nodded slowly. "Yeah, I think so." Dwayne smiled. "You've got guts, kid. Not many stand up like that." Kevin's voice was soft. "I didn't think anyone would help me." Cena crouched. "There's always going to be guys like that, but there's always people like us too." Dwayne handed him a card. "If you ever need anything, call." Kevin held the card tightly. "Thank you. Now go home. Help your family. But be a kid too," Cena said. Kevin turned and walked into the twilight, his small figure fading into the golden sky. Dwayne watched him go. "You think he'll be all right?" Cena nodded. "Yeah, he's got heart." The apartment where Kevin lived stood at the edge of a worn-down neighborhood, lined with peeling paint, rusted balconies, and the distant buzz of broken air conditioning units. He climbed the stairs 2 at a time, the thick wad of cash still clutched tightly in his hand. His chest was pounding, but not from fear this time. From adrenaline, from disbelief, from hope. When he reached the door to his unit on the 3rd floor, he paused. The hallway smelled faintly of boiled cabbage and damp carpet. He slipped the key into the lock and opened the door quietly. Inside, the small apartment was filled with the faint hum of cartoons on a static-laced television and the distant clatter of dishes. His mother stood in the kitchen, her back turned, stirring a pot of something thin and watery. Her uniform from the night shift was still on, wrinkled and stained at the cuffs. Kevin's 3 younger siblings, Jordan, Malik, and baby Ava, sat on the floor surrounded by scattered toys, plastic bowls, and the muffled sounds of giggles and hunger. The sight hit him like a wave. This was home. And tonight, it could be better. His mother turned, wiping sweat from her brow with the back of her hand. "Kevin, is that you?" "Yeah, Mom," he replied, walking in slowly. His eyes scanned the room, the nearly empty pantry, the flickering bulb above the stove, the look of exhaustion etched into every muscle of his mother's face. "Where were you?" she asked. "I told you not to wander too far. And what's in your hands?" Kevin took a slow breath. "I need to show you something." He stepped forward and gently placed the thick roll of cash onto the small dining table. The room seemed to freeze. His mother's eyes widened as she looked down, her breath catching in her throat. "Kevin," she whispered, "what is this?" "I earned it," he said, his voice steady. "I swear. I cleaned cars, washed windows, and 2 guys saw me. They said I worked hard, and they gave me this." Her brow furrowed, her hands trembling as she reached for the money. "2 guys?" Kevin hesitated for just a second. "John Cena and Dwayne Johnson." She blinked. "The movie star and the wrestler?" Kevin nodded. "They were real. They talked to me. They didn't laugh. They didn't ignore me. They helped me." His mother sank slowly into the nearest chair, staring at the money. "This is more than I make in 3 months," she murmured. "Kevin, are you sure this isn't some trick?" "It's not. They said I deserved it." Tears welled up in her eyes as she looked at him, pride and disbelief mingling in her expression. She pulled him into a tight hug, her hands holding him like she never wanted to let go. "I am so proud of you," she whispered. Kevin held her tightly, his voice catching. "I just didn't want you to cry at night anymore." They sat in silence for a few moments, surrounded by the soft voices of his siblings and the distant hum of traffic outside the cracked window. Then she sat up, wiping her tears with the sleeve of her uniform and inhaling deeply. "Okay," she said, "here's what we're going to do. First, we pay the rent. No more late notices. Then groceries. Real groceries, Kevin. Fresh food. After that, the rest goes into a safe place. We save it. For emergencies. For school. For tomorrow." Kevin nodded, a small smile forming. "Yes, ma'am." She ran a hand through his curls, smoothing his hair down. "But listen to me. You're a child. You're not the man of the house. That's not your job. I'm the parent. I take care of you. But thank you for helping. You have no idea how much this means." Kevin glanced at his siblings. Jordan was trying to fix a broken toy truck with duct tape. Malik was licking the inside of a peanut butter lid, searching for flavor. Ava, barely old enough to crawl, was chewing on a spoon. He knew what it meant. This money wasn't just bills. It was nights with food, mornings without fear. It was safety. Later that evening, after dinner, canned soup and toast, but with more laughter than usual, Kevin sat on the couch, staring at the ceiling. His mind drifted back to the parking lot, the slap of the biker's boots, the heavy hand that almost struck him, and the way Cena's grip stopped it cold. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the small business card. Cena's name was printed, clearly, along with a number. Kevin traced the letters with his finger. The card was bent slightly from being held so tightly. As night crept in, he lay in his small bed, listening to the sounds of his siblings breathing, the rattle of the fan, and his mother humming quietly in the kitchen as she washed dishes. For once, she wasn't rushing. For once, she wasn't stressed. The burden had shifted just a little. Enough for her to breathe. He smiled to himself. Not a big smile, just a quiet one. It was the first night in months that he didn't fall asleep worrying. But while sleep took him softly, the world outside didn't rest. Somewhere, not far away, in a dingy bar filled with flickering lights and the smell of gasoline and beer, Scarface sat nursing a bruised jaw and an even more bruised ego. He slammed his drink down and cursed under his breath. "You hear about what happened?" one of the bikers muttered. "Yeah, that punk kid and those two muscle freaks." Scarface narrowed his eyes. "They think this is over? Nobody humiliates me like that. Nobody." A voice from the corner asked, "You seriously thinking of going after them again?" Scarface stood slowly, his back stiff from the slam into the car. "Not them," he said, his voice low. "The kid, the brat that made me look like a fool. He's the reason this happened." He dropped some cash on the table and grabbed his helmet. His eyes gleamed with menace. "Tomorrow," he said, "tomorrow I make it right." Across town, in a warm apartment lit by a flickering lamp, Kevin shifted in his sleep and turned over, the business card still clutched in his hand. He had no idea that danger was already circling again. The morning sun crept slowly through the thin curtains of Kevin's bedroom, casting pale stripes across his pillow. He blinked against the light, the scent of eggs and toast already wafting through the apartment, a rare aroma that only deepened his sense of gratitude. For once, he hadn't woken to the sound of an overdue bill notice or the dull hum of worry in his mother's voice. The heaviness that had lived in his chest for months had eased, if only slightly. He sat up, still in disbelief over what had happened the day before. The envelope of cash was now tucked safely inside a kitchen cabinet, behind the stack of cereal boxes they rarely touched. The business card John Cena had given him still sat on the nightstand, untouched but not forgotten. Kevin dressed quickly, slipping on his worn sneakers and grabbing a few dollars from his pocket. He figured he'd run down to the corner store and grab some milk before his mom even noticed he was gone. Maybe even surprise her with her favorite coffee. He stepped into the hallway quietly and closed the apartment door behind him. The stairwell smelled like burnt toast and dust. As he made his way onto the sidewalk, the city was already stirring, cars honking, sprinklers hissing, kids shouting in the distance. He barely made it half a block before he stopped cold. Parked across the street, half-shadowed beneath a sagging telephone pole, was a black motorcycle. It wasn't the bike itself that made Kevin's stomach turn. It was the man leaning against it. Scarface. Same leather jacket. Same smug grin. His bruised face looked no better than it had yesterday, but the gleam in his eye said he hadn't come for round two. Not yet. He was enjoying the anticipation. Kevin's breath caught. He turned slightly as if to walk back inside, but Scarface lifted a hand and waved with casual menace. "Morning, kid," he called, his voice far too cheerful. Kevin didn't respond. He scanned the street, but no one was around. Not a single pedestrian. Not a soul paying attention. Scarface took a few slow steps forward, his boots thudding softly on the pavement. "You're up early," he said. "Guess you're off to go make some more of that sweet charity money." Kevin held his ground. "It wasn't charity," he replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "I earned it." Scarface smirked. "Yeah? That what you tell yourself? You think two famous muscleheads tossing you a bone means you're special? He stepped closer. Let me tell you something, kid. People like me, we don't forget. You embarrassed me. Kevin's fists clenched at his sides. I didn't do anything. You tried to steal from me. They stopped you. Scarface's smile dropped. His voice turned ice cold. Exactly. They stopped me. In front of my crew, in front of the whole damn lot. And that's on you. Kevin took a half step back. Leave me alone. Scarface chuckled, reaching into his pocket and pulling out a cigarette. He lit it slowly, exhaled a lazy plume of smoke, and stared. Here's the thing. You think they're always going to be around? You think Cena's going to pop out of the bushes every time you go outside? Newsflash, kid, they got lives. You're just some project they'll forget in a week. Kevin's heart pounded, but he didn't retreat. Not yet. They told me to call if anything happened. Scarface smirked. Then maybe I should give you a reason to call. He dropped the cigarette and took another step forward. Kevin tensed, ready to run, but then an engine growled. A black pickup truck turned onto the block and pulled up to the curb. Kevin exhaled sharply. He recognized it instantly. The passenger door opened, and John Cena stepped out, eyes already locked on Scarface. From the driver's side, Dwayne Johnson emerged, his expression unreadable and quiet. Scarface straightened, his confidence fading just enough for Kevin to notice the twitch in his jaw. This again? Scarface muttered. You two just stalking me now? Cena walked calmly toward him, his steps unhurried but deliberate. We told you to stay away. Scarface lifted his hands in mock innocence. I'm just having a conversation. Dwayne's voice was low. You were about to give him a reason to call us. Scarface chuckled, but it sounded forced. Come on, I wasn't going to touch him. Cena didn't blink. Leave? Now? Scarface hesitated. For a moment, Kevin saw the gears turning in the man's mind, his pride warring with his self-preservation. But eventually, he clicked his tongue and stepped back. You got lucky, kid, he muttered. Again. He swung a leg over his bike, revved the engine, and peeled off, vanishing down the block. Kevin stood frozen, his pulse still hammering in his ears. Cena turned to him, crouching so they were eye level. You all right? Kevin nodded slowly. Yeah, I didn't think he'd actually come back. Dwayne joined them. Guys like him, they always come back, because they think they can get away with it. Kevin looked down. What if he does it again? Cena patted his shoulder. Then we handle it, but next time we're not just reacting, we're going to make sure he doesn't want to come back at all. Kevin's eyes narrowed. How? Dwayne and Cena exchanged a glance. There was no hesitation in their voices now, no uncertainty. We send a message, Cena said. Back at the apartment, Kevin's mother opened the door, surprised to see the two celebrities standing behind her son. She tried to hide her concern, but it was there. Kevin quickly explained what happened. She listened, her expression hardening with each word. I want him to be safe, she said firmly. He's just a boy. He will be, Dwayne replied. We're going to make sure of it. They left shortly after, leaving Kevin with a promise and a feeling he couldn't quite describe. Relief, maybe, but also a new kind of resolve. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was standing up. An hour later, at a quiet outdoor table near the gym, Cena took out his phone and dialed. The voice on the other end answered after one ring. Yeah? We need a favor, Cena said. It's about a kid. He listened for a moment, then nodded. Meet us at the gym in 20. Bring the crew. Kevin, watching from the truck, looked over at Dwayne. Who is that? Dwayne smiled faintly. Old friends, people who don't like bullies. And in that moment, Kevin understood. This wasn't over, but this time they were ready. The gym parking lot looked almost empty when Cena and Dwayne pulled in later that afternoon. The harsh sunlight had softened into a golden hue, casting long shadows across the pavement. Kevin sat in the back seat of the truck, peering out nervously, his fingers tapping anxiously against his leg. He didn't know who they were meeting, only that Cena had made a phone call and something big was about to happen. The truck came to a stop near the edge of the lot. Cena killed the engine and turned slightly in his seat. "Stay here for now," he told Kevin. "Just watch. You're safe." Kevin nodded, though his hands wouldn't stop shaking. Moments later, the sound of engines filled the air. Not the aggressive snarl of Scarface's gang, but something deeper, more disciplined. A row of motorcycles rolled in, one by one, like a synchronized formation. Each rider wore clean leather with the same insignia stitched across the back, a steel-winged emblem with the words Iron Code. No skulls, no flames, no chaos. These were men who moved with purpose. At the head of the group was a tall man with a thick beard, mirrored sunglasses, and a quiet intensity. He removed his helmet as he stepped off his bike. Cena stepped forward and extended a hand. "Mason," he said. "John," the man replied, shaking his hand firmly. Then he turned to Dwayne. "Rock." Dwayne nodded. "Glad you came." Kevin watched from the truck, awestruck. These weren't movie stars. These men didn't look like they needed cameras or fans. They looked like they'd walked through war and come out the other side with a code and a reason. Mason looked around the lot, then back at Cena. "So, what's the story?" "There's a guy," Cena said, "name's Scarface. Used to run with East Side. Tried to shake down a kid. We stopped him, but he's not getting the message." Mason raised an eyebrow. "Scarface? That clown?" Dwayne smirked. "You know him?" "Yeah," Mason replied. "Got kicked out of the East Side chapter years ago, stealing from his own guys, picking on rookies, no loyalty. We don't tolerate that kind of filth." Cena nodded. "That's why we called. We need him to understand, permanently, that this kid is off limits." Mason glanced back at his crew. "You called the right people." From inside the truck, Kevin watched Mason walk over. The man took off his glasses and looked the boy directly in the eyes. "You Kevin?" he asked. Kevin hesitated, then nodded. Mason crouched so they were face to face. "You stood up to someone who had no right to touch you. You didn't back down. That takes guts. Most grown men wouldn't do what you did. That's why we're going to take care of this." Kevin looked confused. "You mean you're gonna fight him?" Mason smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. It was a cold, steel-edged smirk. "No, we don't fight trash. We bury it." The crew mounted their bikes without a word. Engines revved, tires turned. The Iron Code rolled out of the lot like a silent thunderstorm, headed straight for Scarface's usual haunt, a run-down garage bar on the edge of town, known for illegal deals and cheap intimidation. Back in the parking lot, Cena and Dwayne remained behind. Kevin stepped out of the truck, his nerves still frayed. "What happens now?" he asked. Dwayne crossed his arms, watching the dust settle from the riders. "Now, Scarface learns what happens when you mess with the wrong people." Cena leaned against the hood. "They're not just bikers. They're veterans, mechanics, dads. They protect their own. And we just made you one of their own." Kevin stood silently for a moment, taking it in. "I've never had anyone stand up for me like this before." "You earned it," Dwayne said. "We didn't do this out of pity. You showed heart. You showed responsibility. We're just making sure you get the chance to keep showing it." Later that evening, Kevin sat at the kitchen table with his mom. The apartment was quieter than usual. The kids were asleep, full from the best dinner they'd had in months. A fresh bag of groceries sat on the counter. The rent envelope was filled and sealed. Kevin told his mom everything about the meeting, the iron code, Mason. She listened, biting her lip. "You're sure this isn't going to come back on us?" "It won't," he said. "They made sure of that." Her eyes filled with tears, not from fear this time, but from something deeper. Relief. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel alone. Later that night, Kevin sat on the fire escape, watching the city lights flicker like stars below. In his hands was the business card from Cena, but now he also had something else, an iron code patch Mason had left behind for him. "You ever need us," Mason had said, "you show that. That means something." The patch was simple. Black and silver thread, a winged emblem around a clenched fist. Kevin turned it over in his hands and smiled. But Scarface was still out there. And while the message was being delivered tonight, Kevin knew things weren't truly over. Not yet. There was always a final move, always a last card to play. Still, for the first time, he felt like he had a team behind him. A real one. And that changed everything. The bar sat on the edge of town, hidden between an abandoned tire shop and a fenced-off storage lot. The building looked like it had been punched in the face and never recovered. One flickering neon sign hung sideways over the door, and the parking lot was cracked with weeds growing between the lines. Inside, Scarface nursed a beer, his jaw still sore, ego still bleeding. The pool table was scratched and tilted, and the air smelled like stale cigarettes and sweat. He paced the floor alone, waiting for the rest of his crew to show. They had scattered after their beating in the parking lot, ashamed, silent. None had returned his calls yet. Cowards. He turned as the bar door creaked open, but it wasn't one of his boys who entered. It was Mason. Behind him, 6 members of the Iron Code walked in silently. Their steps were measured. They didn't smile. The room grew tense immediately. Scarface dropped his beer bottle slightly. "What the hell is this?" Mason said nothing at first. He approached with slow, unshaken purpose. Then, stopping just inches away, he spoke in a voice low and final. "You don't touch that kid again. You don't even look at him. You think what happened with Cena and The Rock was bad? That was a warm-up." Scarface laughed bitterly. "So this is it? Now you're running errands for Hollywood?" Mason's jaw tensed. "No, I'm making sure you remember who you are and who you aren't. You're not one of us. Not anymore. You're a disgrace to the jacket, to the road, to every code we ever lived by." One of the Iron Code members stepped forward and unrolled a faded photo. It was of a much younger Scarface, back when he wore their patch, before he stole from his crew and ran. Mason pointed to it. "We should have handled you years ago. We let you walk. That was our mistake." Scarface shifted, looking toward the bar exit. But another Iron Code man was already there, arms crossed, blocking the way. Mason continued. "Now you're going to listen. You leave the kid alone. You disappear. Or next time we don't just talk." Scarface hesitated, but something in Mason's eyes, something cold and unyielding, made him drop his gaze. He spat on the floor, shoved a chair aside, and muttered, "Fine, whatever. He's not worth it anyway." Mason didn't flinch. "Good, then don't make this worse. Stay gone." The Iron Code turned and left without another word. No threats, no violence, just certainty. The next morning, Kevin stood nervously backstage at his school auditorium. A small student assembly had been arranged, and to his surprise, the principal had asked him to speak. Word had spread. Local papers had written stories. Social media had caught wind of his story. How a hard-working kid trying to help his family was noticed by two superstars and then threatened by a gang. And how he didn't back down. Kevin gripped the sides of the podium as he stepped out. The lights were bright. Dozens of students stared at him, waiting. He took a deep breath. "My name is Kevin. I'm 12. I wash windows for $1. Not because I want to, but because I have to. I help my mom. I help my little sister get diapers. I do what I can." He paused, his voice catching for a second. "A few days ago, people tried to take what I earned. They didn't think a kid like me could ever deserve something good. But I stood up, and two guys who could have walked away, decided to stand up with me." Kevin looked out into the crowd, and just past the rows of students, he saw them. John Cena and Dwayne Johnson, standing in the back near the doors, arms crossed, watching him with pride in their eyes. They told me that hard work matters, that being a kid doesn't mean being weak, that if you keep going, someone will see you, and I believe that now. The room was quiet for a beat, and then applause erupted. Not polite applause, but loud, heartfelt clapping. Kevin smiled, but it wasn't pride. It was relief. He had said what mattered. After the assembly, students approached him. Teachers shook his hand, and even the janitor gave him a proud thumbs up. But the moment that mattered most came when Cena and Dwayne met him outside the building. "You nailed it," Cena said, smiling. "You sure you're only 12?" Dwayne added. Kevin laughed, his nervous energy finally breaking. "Felt like 100 up there." They walked with him down the front steps, the crowd dispersing behind them. Kevin turned to them. "Do you think he's really gone? Scarface?" Dwayne nodded. Mason made sure he got the message. "And if he didn't," Cena added, "he'll learn the hard way." Kevin looked down at the iron code patch he now carried in his backpack. A symbol, a shield, a reminder. That night, as he lay in bed, he thought about how far everything had come in just days. The fear hadn't vanished, but it had a different shape now. It didn't live in his chest. It stood behind him, tall and strong with the weight of support. And something told him this wasn't the end. Not for him. Something bigger was waiting. Morning light spilled across the tiny apartment kitchen as Kevin stirred a cup of hot chocolate, watching the steam rise from the mug like smoke from a chimney. His mother stood nearby, flipping pancakes on a battered skillet. It wasn't a fancy breakfast, but it was warm, real, and filled the space with a kind of comfort they hadn't felt in a long time. His little brothers chased each other across the floor, giggling and shouting, and baby Ava smacked her spoon against her tray with joyful chaos. Everything felt okay. The rent had been paid, the fridge was stocked, and for once, Kevin's mom wasn't rushing out the door in her uniform. She was smiling as she cooked, humming to herself. Kevin reached into his pocket and pulled out the iron code patch, brushing his thumb across its surface. He still didn't know how Mason had handled Scarface exactly, but he hadn't seen or heard from the man in days. No bike parked near the corner. No leather figure waiting in the shadows. Just peace. Maybe temporary, but still peace. A knock came at the door. Kevin looked up sharply, his body instinctively tensing. His mother glanced toward the door with a flicker of concern in her eyes. Kevin stood and crossed the room, peeking through the peephole. He smiled immediately. He pulled open the door. John Cena stood there with a relaxed grin, and behind him, Dwayne Johnson nodded politely, holding a small box in his hands. "Hey, champ," Cena said. "Hope we're not interrupting breakfast." Kevin stepped aside quickly. "No, come in." His mother appeared, wiping her hands on a towel. Her jaw dropped slightly. "Oh my God, again?" Dwayne smiled. "We thought we'd stop by one last time." They stepped into the apartment, and for a moment, everything seemed surreal again. The two icons looked strangely at home in the small space, ducking under the low ceiling fan and patting the heads of Kevin's curious younger siblings. Kevin's mom guided them to the table. "Please, sit. I don't even know what to say. You two have already done more than enough." Dwayne looked at her seriously. "Ma'am, you've been doing everything on your own for a long time. We just gave a little push. You did the heavy lifting." Cena nodded. "And your son? He's one of the most impressive kids we've ever met." Kevin blushed and stared down at his mug. Dwayne placed the box on the table and slid it over. "Open it." Kevin's mom lifted the lid carefully. Inside was a white envelope and a legal document with a gold seal. She picked it up, eyes scanning rapidly. Her breath caught. "Is this a scholarship fund?" Cena smiled. "It's in Kevin's name. For school, for anything he wants to do. We've also talked to a few people. We might be able to get him into a mentorship program, help him develop skills, maybe even something bigger down the road." Tears welled up in her eyes. She covered her mouth and looked at Kevin. "Do you understand what this means?" Kevin stared at the paper, the seal, the printed words. It didn't feel real, not at first, but then the weight of it hit him. This was more than money. This was belief, investment, future. "I don't know how to thank you," she said quietly. "You already did," Dwayne replied. "You raised this kid." Kevin looked up. "I'm going to make it worth it. All of it, I promise." Cena ruffled his hair. "We know you will." Before they left, Cena knelt in front of Kevin. "You've got strength, but you've also got something most people never learn. Courage under pressure. Hold on to that, and keep lifting others up the way you tried to lift your family." Dwayne handed Kevin a new business card, this one with a different number and his personal initials. "If anything happens, you call. Doesn't matter what. We've got your back." They stepped out into the hallway, but not before Kevin's mom pulled them both into a tight, tearful hug. "Thank you for changing our lives." Cena looked back once more at Kevin. "No," he said. "He changed his own. We just saw it." Later that day, Kevin walked to the library with his backpack slung over one shoulder. He passed the same corner where he used to stand with his bucket and rag offering to clean windows. That bucket was long gone now, but the lessons he'd learned were not. He passed a girl sitting on the curb crying softly, her backpack torn open and books scattered. Two older boys had run off moments earlier, laughing after knocking her down. Kevin didn't hesitate. He walked over, knelt beside her, and helped her pick up every book. She looked at him with a tear-streaked face. "Thank you," she whispered. He smiled gently. "No problem." He watched her walk away, then stood there for a moment, the wind brushing against his hoodie. He could still hear Scarface's voice in the back of his mind. "Someone like you doesn't get handed 20 grand. But that voice no longer carried any weight. It was just noise. As the sun dipped lower on the horizon, Kevin pulled out the iron code patch from his backpack and pinned it to his jacket pocket. He wasn't trying to be a hero. He just knew what it felt like to stand alone. And now he knew how much power even one act of kindness could have, because once someone had stood for him, and he'd never forget it.